Coming to you from a secret desert location, it's Congoleum Corner, featuring Congoleum's National Installation Specialist and CFI Resilient Certifier, Joe Sia.
Today we're talking about sheet goods, and specifically Congoleum AirStep with the Ultratech backing system. Now this product is designed with Your Choice Plus installation, and if you don't know what that is, it basically allows you to either loose lay, perimeter staple, or fasten with glue and or tape, or a full spread application with a trowel on and a roll on application. And the one thing that's similar in all of those is the way we construct the seam in the product is going to be exactly the same. So I've got limited space here, so I've got a really short section of product. But the first thing we're going to have to determine is what our pattern match is. And the products are made on cylinders that are 54 inches. So all the pattern matches in the length are going to be based on a 54 inch or less multiple of 54 inches. The width matches can be different. We would refer you to Congoleum.com with your product number to find out what your specific pattern match is, and we do have a straight match and a economy match for certain applications. Okay. Notice that when I store and handle the sheet goods, it's always on a core, taped and with the face out. That keeps the product curved to the floor. You should never store any of your pieces or even travel them in the truck rolled face in with the white or backing part being shown. Try to avoid that. Okay? The particular product I'm working with today is a plank look, and what I wanted you to see is that these planks on this particular product are the same width across. So these planks are all about 8 inches to the center of this little grout line. Okay, that's helpful to me. And sometimes you'll be working with a product that has a tile square, and this particular one has a approximately 6 inch from edge to edge on this. When you're doing a seam, a long seam, it's important to know what that is, and I'll explain to you why just in a second here. So I've got my first piece staged. I have for my purposes, I have a dark pencil mark or chalk line on the ground, and that just keeps me centered. Now you may put this line, a pencil mark on this after you get your first piece set, but it's important to know that when we manufacture seams, we don't want to do the seams first. So I will take my first piece, install it, cut it in. If I'm going to fasten it to the floor, I'm going to do that. So if I'm full spreading, this is fastened to the floor full spread. If it's loose laid, I'll have a 1/8 inch space, a 1/16 to 1/8 inch space around the perimeter to allow for movement. Or I could have tape or a rolled on adhesive or staples in that side. But I will have this installed, fastened to the floor. I'm going to bring in my second piece here, and I've already cut this for the pattern. If you look close enough, you can see that this edge runs into this particular pattern, or the small edge off of the salvage also picks up this pattern here. So all I need to do is cut some reference windows, so if I'm on the end of the job site, if I'm getting baseboard, and I may make a little slice down there just big enough so I can see where that grout line terminates, then line this up. Now you guys know, obviously this is very easy for me because I'm only working with like a 2-foot piece of vinyl here. If you're on a job site, you've got, you're shifting around with a 20-footer or more. One of the first things you're going to notice is when this second piece comes into play, if it's up the wall, you're going to get some kind of bow in the middle. The only way you can alleviate that is get your seam lined up on pattern, put some tape or weight or something to hold it, and then go over and install or cut in that long wall over here so that it alleviates the pressure of a bow. Okay? Once you have that established, you come back over here and check, and you could, if you're fastening, you could get ready to fasten. If you're full spreading, besides that midline, you'll have some lines out here, dry lines, so you can flap your product over. Now the one thing I want to do is, the way to double check if I'm exactly on pattern, you remember earlier We looked at that and we determined it was an 8-inch. Okay, so you could take a tape measure, run across the pattern on the seam, and make sure that the grout line in this particular pattern I have 16 inches. Okay, now better yet, most of you guys have a tape measure. You guys know that at the end of a steel tape measure, this little tab here sometimes is loose and it's not very accurate. Some of you old school guys may still have a carpenter's ruler for short measurements in the truck. I actually like this. Gives me a much more accurate representation. So if I've got 20 foot, 30 foot or so, and I have to run the length of that seam to make sure I'm on pattern, I certainly can do that from a fixed point just by measuring across. The other way you can do it is actually take a section of your product, scrap piece, and cut a small section out, let's say like this, and then set that up across the seam and run it down. And there's a good little tip on how to make sure, because if you get some deviations or one of these grout lines is off, you have the one that hasn't fixed yet, you have to adjust it, and you can adjust it. Okay. Now, all our seams at Congoleum are going to be overlapped and double cut. So a lot of installers will handle sheet goods by straight edging both sides and actually putting those seams together before they do anything else, and that's not actually the recommended process. What I'm going to do now that I have this lined up is I'm going to overlap and double cut it, but I'm also going to take a piece of scrap to create some pressure at the seam, because our seam sealer is going to be inserted into that seam cut. So the whole entire length of the seam, you are going to want to place a piece of scrap underneath. And if you do a lot of sheet goods, it wouldn't be a bad idea to hold some of these pieces on your truck for when you actually have to do this. Now, I will set the bulk of this piece to my straight edge side. In other words, if I am setting up on the seam, if I have a wide straight edge, I want enough there so it's not teeter-tottering off of this end. Okay. So again, my seam moved a little bit. Double check this end. Now, the next question is where on a small, almost pencil line grout line on this wood pattern are we going to be with our cut? And most of you guys your natural answer would be to try to go down the middle of that, especially if you're straight edge and abutting. But the reason we don't straight edge and butt is because there's no such thing as a real flat floor, and your knife is going to bounce up and down and create gaps and tightness all along the seam. When you overlap and double cut, you're getting a pencil mark. I'm sorry, you're getting a puzzle piece almost. So whatever your knife does, even if your straight edge moves, what's going on underneath is going to match it. So you're not going to have those areas of tightness and looseness. And I inadvertently said pencil mark because I'm still thinking about this little grout line. So now that I know I'm totally matched up, I'm not going to cut into that grout line. I'm going to stay off the top of it. So basically this scrap piece that comes off will have that grout line or that pencil mark line on there, and the one on the floor will stay on the floor. So using obviously a longer straight edge than this and a brand new sharp blade, and if you unwrap a brand new blade and are making a seam, you should wipe it off with a rag because they are oiled to keep them from rusting. And you have to cut through both pieces, making sure that your blade is straight up and down. If you stop, keep the blade buried in the material. Continue on. When you get to the very end, you're going to have to turn around and come back. I usually will do that left-handed because obviously I'm at the wall, and I'm not going to be able to cut all the way up the wall. But I'll get as close to it as I can before I have to turn around. Okay, so like I said, this piece, this scrap piece, has that that line on it, that dark line that I cut off. This is the other scrap piece coming off, and of course we have to remove our extra piece of material that created what you'll see as a snap in. So that tightness, remember, this is either loose laid or fastened to the floor. This side is cut in and fastened the way you want it, and now you come back and you can almost hear that crackling into place. Okay. And so that's a pattern match finish seam. That's what it's supposed to look like. Now, no matter how you have this floor installed, the seams in AirStep have to be down to the floor or fastened to the floor, and you can do that in either rolling on an adhesive or using our quick stick tape. So let me show you that process. So I'm just going to roll this over and put something heavy to hold it, and you guys see that I have that line on the floor. You want to try not to crease your product if you can help it. Okay. That should hold it. So quick stick tape is designed to work immediately. So I have my line drawn. I'm going to take quick stick tape and center it. Give it a little bit of a roll. Once it's rolled, you can go ahead and release the release liner. Just kind of spear it a little bit. You can see that quick stick tape is a double-sided tape. You can see right through it as a clear carrier. Interestingly enough, the adhesive to the floor is a solvent-based adhesive, which works great on concrete. The top adhesive is a PSA or pressure sensitive that's designed to work with our Ultratech backing system. So the first piece should get rolled over. And remember, you're only rolling this with a heavy roller if you're full spreading. On loose layer perimeter here, you can use a broom to make sure all this air is out. Your second piece down. Shift it a little bit on me. And with that, in the field, with the tightness you created, you should be able to roll this in. Now this compression that you built into this will actually, because this is a felt-based and a non-fiberglass product, that will compress right down there, even on that short. So in that short tape will hold that little bit of fullness. So all I have to do is give that a hand roll, and now that seam is ready for seam sealing. Okay, and the AirStep products are seam sealed with SU-106 seam sealer. This is designed for products that have Scotchgard and urethane, which our product does. It's a no-stick surface. You will look to the date on the top, which is a use by date. And as long as your seam sealer is before that date, you're using it before that date, it's good to go. The kit has 2 Scotch-Brite pads, applicator bottle, and there's a little pin. And you might want to have that. It's good to clean out the tip or even modify the tip if you had to. There's a part A and B, and there is a dowel that will help us prepare the edge of this seam to take seam sealer, because the Scotchgard doesn't allow normal seam sealer to stick to it. There's certainly a set of directions in here. One of the things that the directions will tell you is locate part B, shake that part B up prior to mixing. Okay. All right, so once part B has been shaken up, you can open it and part A, and we want you to mix both 100% of both bottles together. Now this kit is designed to cover about 70 linear feet at 1/8 inch, and you may have just a doorway seam, but we don't want you to do tailgate chemistry on this, because once you open these bottles, the chemical is exposed to the air and will not work properly the second time. So you really have to blow the whole kit out. And I normally, actually when I'm doing this mixing, I'll normally step outside. I won't even do this over the customer's sink in case there's spillage. This is still a chemical, and it does have some VOCs when it's first open. So a well ventilated area is best. So part A into B, 100% of both bottles emptied. Put this cap on. And I would use some kind of rag or something just to cover the tip like this and give it a little shake. You really don't want this in contact with your skin if you can help it. And you don't have to shake it for too long. If you develop some bubbles on the top, you're going to let those gas off. And again, this little pin goes right to the top. If you, for some reason, want to lessen the amount of seam sealer on the bead, you can take a pliers to that and tighten this up, and it'll give you a little bit of a less of an application. On lighter colors, you might want to do that. Now, like I said, this seam sealer is not going to stick to our Scotch guarded surface, so the next thing we have to do is prep that surface over the top of where I cut. The other reason why you want to be out of the small grout lines is because of the size of that dowel. It doesn't allow for that the pad to get into where it needs to be. So I drop that. Now listen, I wrap that dowel and I'm just lightly pinching it. With moderate pressure down, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 back and forth strokes. When you move your straight edge, make sure you're overlapping where you last were. You may see a little bit of a color change there. I don't seam seal that now, simply because it's has dust on it. You can see dust on the pad. I need to remove that from the floor. A little bit of just room temperature water on a rag is going to do that. It'll remove all the contamination. You might get some green pad on that. And then, since this is a chemical-based product, you want to actually have that dry. Now, if you've done a full spread with a trowel, if you have any squeeze through of adhesive coming out of that, you have to take a hook knife or something and clear that, because the bonding adhesive to the floor is not mixed with the seam sealer. Okay, they kind of repel each other. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to apply seam sealer. What I like to do usually is get an idea how loose that's running, because sometimes two-parters can be pretty watery. So I want to try to get a small line like that, but I also have to take my finger on the bottle and press this little, what I call whale's tail or fin into the cut. So you locate your cut, you push down, you actually want to see that cut opening. Now that's introducing seam sealer into the cut edges of the product, and the seam sealer will be melting the product together with the stuff on top, just kind of creating a cap, which will stick now because we use the green pads to prepare the seam. So you continue that all the way down. The SU-106 is really an overnight or a 16, 18 hour fully dry seam sealer. So you want to protect that from traffic. And if you're worried about traffic, a lot of times when I leave the job site, I'll take this tube and cut it in half and bridge it over the top of my seam with a little timestamp on it saying don't remove till tomorrow, 6 hours after the time I finish my last part of seam sealing. And that's how you do that. I'm Joe Sia from a secret location deep inside Arizona's Verde Valley. We'll see you guys next time.
For questions, check Congoleum.com anytime or call 609-584-3805. Thanks for watching.